Today, I have Sara joining me, and I'm so excited. And we are going to just dive in and talk so much about areas of challenging situations with clients, what it looks like for those who are wanting to step into the doula field, and a few other things that we get to kind of talk about as they come up. I really want to make sure I do justice in introducing Sara. So I'm going to hand over the introduction. And Sara, I would love if you can tell our guests and listeners all about who you are and about this beautiful backdrop that you have.
Yes, I'm Sara Venaglia. I currently operate out of my holistic doula. I've been a doula for 15 years, actually. I started in postpartum and then started in birth and then did some fertility support, some other kind of loss and grief support. And I'm actually in graduate school right now to continue on my sort of perinatal support journey in mental health. So the background behind me, as Stacey mentioned, is actually the work of a lovely doula friend and partner of mine, Karen Guthrie, who works with Birth Your Way doulas, which we had co-founded when I first moved to California. So in the middle of my doula journey, I spent the first 8 years of my time in Virginia working in postpartum care. And then when I moved to California, I met Karen and we started working on birth together. We were partners for a long time. Really enjoyed that. But as I shifted more into my postpartum focus and she was sticking with birth, we ended up separating the kind of two different companies. But she's still my absolute go to in terms of referring for birth mamas that I can't take care of when birthing parents. And then same on the other side is when they're done and they need more support after the birth, then she can refer back to me and then I can pick up from there because I know they've had excellent birth care. So I get to come in and just continue that on and make sure that everything postpartum is working itself
That is
out.
amazing. And wow, what a big move from Virginia to California.
3,000
Just a
miles or
short
so.
drive. How long have you lived in California now? Okay.
About eight
Wow. So
years now.
you've kind of stood in. Is there any horizon of like going back to Virginia, or you're like, I'm here, it's solid?
I think for only for personal reasons. My brother and sister-in-law are expecting a baby soon, so I'll be going back and doing postpartum support in Virginia, but not as a professional,
Oh, that's
just
so
for my
exciting.
family.
Is this first, like, nephew, niece, baby? Oh my
First baby.
goodness. Yes. Well, they are gonna be so lucky to
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm
they are gonna be
excited.
so lucky to have you. That is incredible.
Yeah,
Well, I am just so appreciative of having you on here. I know we have talked a
happy to be
little
here.
bit, but I am really excited to just kind of dive in. You are a wealth of knowledge and so incredible in the experiences that you've had. And so I know our listeners are going to walk away better than they came. And so part of being doulas is talking about harder stuff. And so today we are going to kind of go into that of discussing the challenges, situations that we might face when we are serving clients. And this might come up in a few other podcasts, but we kind of did a questionnaire for the doulas before coming in and just really reflected on information that they shared. And Sarah's responses were just so elegant. And I just thought, this person, you can just tell when someone has like a wealth of knowledge and has walked through varying situations. And so that first question was, can you discuss a challenging situation you faced while supporting a client and how you overcame it? And Sarah, I'll kind of let you jump in if you want to start to answer that a little bit. And then I want to go ahead and like potentially ask some follow-up questions or, all of the things. So if you want to dive in what that looked like.
Yeah. So the first 8 years when I was working in Virginia, I had a really easy go of it because I was working on a team. And so clients were just coming to me. A lot of them knew each other. A lot of them were like, oh, so and so told me
Mhm.
about you. So I want that too. So it was very easy to just do the same thing, with slightly different circumstances over and over again.
Mhm.
California was where a lot of that changed for me. The client market was so much bigger, so much more diverse, not only in the range and places to find clients, but what those clients were expecting, whether that was cultural things, whether that was just standard of care from kind of the different ranges of lifestyle out here in Southern California. So I had to learn to navigate a lot more when I was in charge of all of the process from start to finish, from marketing to interviewing to hiring to
Yeah.
actually doing the doula work. There's so many more pieces that go into it ahead of actually being in the home and utilizing everything that you picked up in training or having your own children with someone else. So the interviewing process, I think, was really the kind of first major stumbling block I hit. I was so eager to work with clients that I was like, well, I can work with anybody. I'll just figure it out when I get there. And then that turned out to be something that
Mhm.
became problematic for me when I had clients that didn't either understand what I did or that kind of had very specific views
Mhm,
of what they expected of me that started to more and more just not
mhm,
align with who I am and how I work. Challenges is one of the first ones I think that I really encountered was, things that we know are
mhm.
not safe, that are industry wide understood to not be safe. Loose blankets, lots of loveys, too many layers, all of those things. And then saying, well, just take care of, but I can't do both. I can't have an unsafe
Mhm,
environment and just do my job. So I really began to focus on how do I look at this in turn. So I'm not ending up in this situation where I'm already in the client's house, I've already contracted, I've already been hired, and now I'm being asked to do something that
mhm.
goes against who I am and how I
Yeah.
operate.
And I think too is also with that when you talk about kind of those like unsafe sleep habits, having to break through generations that might be kind of
Mhm.
natural of grandparents and great grandparents are like, well, this is what we did, so do this, or it's fine. And now, right, we a lot of research has shown, and there's been a lot of information provided to us of what happens. This is what they said to do, or this like comforts the baby, or that type of stuff and having to kind of have those hard conversations. And thing we do is provide resources and allowing clients to navigate that.
Absolutely.
It is hard as a doula to watch. We're providing the resources, but they're kind of still like, I don't want that information. I just want you to do this one thing. And it is hard to navigate.
There's also room for the parents having a way that they will do it when they are in charge, where it's their child and their rules versus what is my responsibility when that is turned over to me of taking care of and making sure that this child is safe and healthy and thriving when I am in charge. So I think there's a lot of kind of room for both. Definitely the education piece is huge. I don't want parents to make unsafe decisions, but I do understand and respect that I have the luxury of getting to go home and sleep in my own house, in my own bed by myself after I'm done versus they are going right back into
Yeah.
that cycle. Parenting is a 24/7 job. So I think there's room for both, but it's maybe understanding that when I am in charge, there are certain things that I am bound by for liability reasons, for safety reasons, for just making sure that I'm doing my job and not just acquiescing to something that doesn't feel like
Uh,
a good fit.
so with that, of kind of having in the lessons that you learned through that process, and you mentioned kind of now, like knowing what clients to support and that type of stuff. What did that look like of identifying those lessons and carrying them through now? So maybe give some examples listeners of what it might look like in an interview process that you consider maybe like you are like, oh, okay, this is how I can identify we won't be the best fit now with good resources or, referrals. Or, okay, we can definitely work together.
I think the biggest thing was when I first started interviewing for myself, I
Mhm.
thought that my responsibility was just to answer the question. They were going to have a ton of questions they were going to ask me, and then I was just supposed to answer. I found the more and more that I interview, I should have at least as many, if not more, questions for them than they have for me. What are you expecting out of this? How did you first hear about doulas? Who set your expectations? Did you stumble across this on the internet? Did you have a best friend who was like, oh my God, get a doula? Where did this whole idea of like, I want this kind of support come from? Because that
Mm,
can help me understand what they're expecting it to look like. They have a best friend that talk all about their experience. Okay, what is it that you liked about that? What is that you're hoping to get out of it? Do you not know what you
mm,
need? You just feel like I'm going to drown if I don't have somebody knowledgeable helping me out? Is it that you have a relative that had a horror story about, oh my God, my baby
yeah.
never slept. I got no sleep. I could never put them down. And you're scared about that? Or is this your fourth baby and you know that you've got three kids that have to get up and go to school tomorrow? So you need to get a good night's sleep and you need to be able to pass that torch to somebody who knows what they're doing and can just take care of them. So really kind of understanding, I think of it as I have first time
Mhm,
parents, second time parents, and then three plus. First time parents are still figuring out what
mhm,
they want, what they're trying to do and not do. Second time parents have been through this once and they either know what they
mhm.
love and what they absolutely want to change because that did not go well the first time. Three plus, they've generally got their rhythm. They've got older kids that they're thinking about that have other structures in place. So it's usually a very different kind of relationship. So those are like the three categories that I start off with in terms of what do you already know or what are
Yeah.
you looking for
And
me to
that's
provide help and
huge of
support with?
having those conversations. And I always tell doulas because when you start out and you're a new doula, it's so intimidating to walk into a consultation. Feel like, right, you're the one that's like, I have to show myself, I have to prove myself, all of the things. And I always try to remind them, like, you're interviewing as well. You are interviewing them. Is this like good pairing between like you're utilizing, right? You're identifying are our expectations of syncing and meeting in a place that we can support because every client has varying needs. And I love that postpartum work is so personalized, but sometimes expectations can be so, so different, like aspect of safe sleep or what, they view as what they were wanting, but they hear from maybe someone else of, well, my doula was here and she cleaned the bathroom for me, and then that trickles through because there's kind of that general consensus of like the role of a postpartum doula. And sometimes doulas above and beyond. And that's incredible. But it kind of then makes it, if you have a client who moved from one state to another and they were like, yeah, we had this amazing postpartum doula, we want to hire another one. And as the doula, you're like, oh, yeah, like this is great. They already know. We go through the process, they hire, and now I'm here. And they're giving me a list of things that are really outside the scope of a postpartum doula. And so, have you ever walked into a situation similar to that,
Mhm.
of where maybe what the client was asking you for was really outside the scope? Or have you witnessed it as well? And kind of what did that look like for you?
That was a really big change for me in my Virginia to California doula work because I had been part of a team in Virginia and it wasn't ever well
Mm,
specified if, especially on an overnight shift, if resting or sleeping when the baby sleeps, common way I hear that, but was acceptable or whether that was seen as no, you're here and your shift is to do whatever needs doing until I get up in the morning. So I think a lot of doulas stumble over that one right away. People have the idea that like, well, I'm paying you, you're not going to sleep. And other people are like, no, that's part of the job. Like, I am supposed
mhm,
to help the baby understand that this is not a 24/7 operation. There is a point where your parents want to go to
yeah,
sleep, and you need to understand that that is how the household's going to be. Things are going to be quiet. The lights are
mhm,
going to be dim. There's not going to be a vacuum cleaner running in the other room. So I think setting that expectation with the parents is important as
mhm,
well. For me, that was something I am a sleep with a baby sleeps doula when I did overnight care. That was something that I found
mhm,
was important to not setting my clients up to struggle with baby is
mhm.
used to getting attended to like that because I'm awake and I'm a few feet away. It's very easy. Baby realizes that they need to get their parents' attention, make enough noise,
Mhm.
make enough wiggles and stirs that there's not somebody who's already awake and focused on that. That's a different kind of relationship that I'm setting up the
Yeah.
parents to
No,
have
that is
when I'm not
and that
there
is a big
overnight
one,
anymore.
especially that I see a lot that comes up of overnight postpartum care. In my team that we have set in the contract is defined because we do have those situations that clients have this idea and this expectation and what that looks like. And there are some nights where the doula is up because that's just kind of what happened. But when we're talking about what support looks like, that very defined of, okay, here's overnight support is care for the baby and what that might look like. But we also have, you know, our lives and our health and that type of stuff, that important role. And so I always say, like, it's not a deep sleep. I'm not climbing and sleeping, like I'm resting, I'm closing my eye. I want to be in the general vicinity of the baby.
Yeah.
But that is a huge point you made of also if the baby expects that instant care, that is only setting them up for worse because then you have a baby who's like expecting to be comforted every time it kind of wakes up, and babies wake up. Like there's a lot going on there for them as well. Yeah. What about when clients, this is kind of a side question, but are really, really like particular about the sleep schedule? So their hope is like, baby's born, we want baby on a sleep schedule now. Is that something where you're kind of gently like,
Uh,
that's kind of not the role that I focus on?
I like to pose a counter question when anything like that comes up about baby being, whether it's a feeding schedule, a sleeping schedule, anything where they're like, this is how the baby will operate. I ask the parents, okay, what does your schedule look like? Do you consistently go to bed and wake up at exactly the same time every single day? Do you eat your meals at 6, noon, and 6? You know what?
Mhm.
Are you that consistent as an adult who knows all of these best practices? Do you always eat your
Yeah.
vegetables or do you have a day where it's no, I'm having ice cream for dinner and that's okay? So if we can't be consistent as adults who understand and know all of these things, how are we going to expect a baby to be able to be that consistent and that trainable? Anybody who's ever had a pet, even a pet, it's arguably a very trainable creature, not always trainable. So I really try to reset the expectations. And I think a lot of people that I see a shift when I'm talking to them of like, oh, or I
Yeah.
don't like that you're right about the fact that I am not super consistent. So, I think there's room. I started changing the language that I use instead of putting it on a schedule.
Mhm.
I put babies on a routine because a routine is about setting expectations. You know that when you go into your room and the lights go quieter and the soft music comes on and the white noise
Mhm.
machine comes on, that is setting up the routine for this is sleep time. This is you're going to have to do a lot more wiggling and grunting, or maybe even a little fussing and crying to get my attention if you need something after this point. And there's room in the ages and the stages with
Mhm.
newborns, and especially if we're factoring any sort of preemies or multiples that can change what that looks like. But it's really about setting,
Yeah.
for me, the patterns that the parents are going to help baby make associations because those things
Mhm.
go all the way through into toddlerhood and even going into school, which is
Mhm.
arguably the first place that a lot of babies will
Yeah.
have a very solid, regimented routine is when you have a classroom full of kids. So everything from newborn to going to school is building up to that point and getting them used to the idea of do we do
Yeah.
next? What is the setup
That
for
is
the
wonderful.
activity that
That's great,
follows
and I
this?
love that routine, just simple word changes make a huge difference, and I think there's always such a gentle way that we can go about kinda, like, flipping it so the parents can reflect on that and just kind of even asking that question. As a CLC, sometimes what I'll do is, like, baby needs to be skin to skin, belly to belly, and stuff like that. Bring baby, not, like, do these steps. I'll be like, "Okay, turn your head and now try to drink water. Can you do that? No, like it's really hard. Now
Mhm.
think about that when you're like nursing the baby. That's why we want, straight on and bringing baby to the breast and all of the things. And so sometimes those things being able to give them that visual perspective make a difference in that. Well, speaking of like the support and all of the things we do, one of the things we really focus on is helping new doulas and those that are navigating becoming doulas or those that are also experiencing situations or things for the first time. But I would love if you have some advice that you'd want to give someone that is considering becoming a doula from your own experience, any insights, what that might look like for you.
I think the biggest thing that I have learned in 15 years of going
Mhm.
about this is I am by no means the same doula that I was when I first started as I am now. And not just because I've taken more trainings or I've had more clients, but because I have figured out more of what does this role mean to me? Like we've
Yeah.
talked about in the interviewing stage, how even that process has changed for me about how do I approach clients? How much am I, advocating for what I do and what I'm capable of? And when am I capable of it? We were talking about things to do and not do overnight. I used to make food overnight until I was making cookies one night and I mixed up the wax paper and the parchment paper and had a smoking, not quite fire, but definitely a big smoke bomb in the oven. That set off the fire alarm that I then couldn't turn off and actually woke up the grandparents who came up and turned it off for me. So that was really embarrassing because it was a silly mistake and it's something that I wouldn't have made if I had been wide awake and during the day when my brain is more online. So
Mhm.
thinking about just how you operate. Some people are night owls and like to be awake and like to get things done. They're building bookshelves
Mhm.
or cooking all the food or something. If that's what works for you, that's fine. But thinking that is what is expected of you after your few days of training isn't necessarily, that's not where everybody needs to start. And that applies to
Cool.
things like contracts as well.
Yeah.
My first 8 years in Virginia, I didn't have one. I was part of the team. People just referred to me. They paid me at the end of the week, and that was that. I was 22. I didn't know better. And when I got out here and I
Mhm.
realized that like I needed something, I have been adding to it with almost every client since I started.
Mhm.
I pay attention in the groups when somebody brings up how would you handle this kind of problem? So I think sometimes networking is not all about the local doulas to
Mhm.
you. It's about just picking up threads like this, either from podcasts like Doula Collective or groups on social media that you can figure out like, what would I do in that situation? Or like maybe I have very clear thoughts about how I would handle that. Maybe that's something I need to
Mhm.
add. The clients will know now from the go, so I don't have this problem. Things
Mhm.
like the safe sleep or reasons that you would not continue to do something the parents have asked you. Things like the cleaning the toilets, my light
Mhm.
housekeeping, including baby laundry and dishes and baby bottles and pump part type dishes. During the day, I have slightly different regards to that. Like I will do some of maybe the parents' laundry or maybe even some sibling
Mhm.
laundry, depending on if that's really the best support that I can offer the family. But that's not something I'm going to stay up all
Mm.
night doing.
Mhm.
That's something that I differentiate between day daycare and night care for that reason. So even if you are willing to do different things, when are you willing to do them? Is it something you'll do every shift, or is it something they need to let you know, hey, we've got a big
Mhm.
family event this weekend. Could you do a couple extra loads of laundry on your shift on Thursday? Things like that, or
Mm.
just about the client letting me know about
Yeah.
their life and
Yeah.
what's going
Mhm.
on. And then that being a
And I love what you
conversation
said
rather than
of adding
expectation.
to the contract. I think it's a living document, and so it constantly naturally be changing as
Mhm.
you learn and grow. When you think of, like, becoming a doula, what are some things that you had in place at the time that you became a doula or that you realized, like, okay, support system-wise, all of the things that that looks like and step into it? Because I think it oftentimes looks like a very, very shiny and exciting job that we do. It is so beautiful and life-giving, but there's also the other side of it that is kind of stressful and hard. And what are the ways that kind of we can, share to those that are listening of how you can step into becoming a doula with kind of a solid foundation and support system as you navigate it?
I think the biggest eye opener for me was again been my change over to California, that there was so much more to the business side of being a doula. Like all of
Mhm.
the hours that you're actually with the client are arguably the work
Mm,
of it. But how did you get to the point of actually being in the client's home? Do you work with an
mhm,
agency? Do you have marketing time and expenses? Are you part of a team? Do you have backups or colleagues that you refer to or work with that
mhm.
you partner for referrals with? Sometimes there are referral fees depending on the doula or their business setup. And what does that look like? Like all of that is coming out of whatever you're actually charging and earning from the hours you're with the client. And I think the biggest thing that was an eye opener for me and is for a lot of newer doulas is the amount of time you spend with your business, not just with the client. Like you can work 40 hours a
Yeah.
week with a client or more sometimes, certainly depending on the length of your shifts and how many days or nights a week you work. But all of those back end hours, not just invoicing and setting up interviews and whatnot that are unpaid or that are paid out of what you're charging. But
Mhm.
do you have a website? How much time are you spending on your contract, making edits on that, networking and perusing the social media groups or listening to podcasts and things that you're gathering these?
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I have a list in my phone right now of 3 edits I need to make to my contract at some point this week. So all of that background time you're putting into your business
Yeah.
to be able to do this. And that's time that it needs to factor into kind of your work life balance because that's time away from your family or away from your friends or your social groups. And that's fine if that feels sustainable for you
Mhm.
or making sure that is part of the balance of time that you're accounting for. It sounds, oh, well, 40 hours a week with
Yeah.
clients, that's 4 10-hour night shifts. Okay, that's fine. It's cool. That feels very workable for a lot of people until you realize how many daytime hours you're spending
Mhm.
making little edits, changing things up, interviewing. Not every interview converts to a client. So there's
Yeah.
time that you're not getting paid to follow up on things like that. Any events that you attend, any courses that you take, additional training, certification hours, years,
Yeah.
things like that are all part of being a doula for longevity. In addition to just always having a client
Yeah.
and kind of keeping up a wonky sometimes schedule with you never quite know when baby's going to be
Mhm.
born. So when is my start date? How do I keep my contracts from
Yeah.
overlapping? There's all kinds of questions that kind of come up and that you really
Yeah.
navigate in
Yeah.
real
And
time.
thank you for sharing and being vulnerable because there is times when we are going to make mistakes and we have to learn from them and navigating that in this world. But that too is, I think, part of my passion of starting. I have a team in DFW is because, like, I just want to be a doula. I don't want to do the invoicing. I don't want to worry about the website. I don't want to worry about all of that stuff. And I, did juggled both for a really long time and then really fell into the passion of, like, I want to support the doula. I want to doula the doula, right? And so giving them that space and that ability, be the one that sometimes has the hard
Yeah.
conversations with clients for them. Well, money with clients. So being the one that has to be like, oh, we got to pay our invoice, right? Or support can't continue, like what that might look like. And so I love that there are opportunities and everyone can kind of navigate of, do I want to be, a solo doula? Do I want to be in more of a collective or partnership or within a team and be within an agency and everything? And they all come with pros and con things, but navigating what that looks like. And I did want to ask you kind of that transition for you because you did birth and postpartum, or you kind of started with postpartum, went into birth, and then navigated back into postpartum. And kind of wanted to ask if you don't mind sharing some of like why that transition for you, because I think sometimes some doulas also go in with a thought in mind, but then there's a lot of, elements on each differ. And so if you want to share a little bit.
Yeah. In two contrasting stories, how Karen and I worked things out
Oh,
when we were both kind of focusing on birth was Karen got into being a birth doula with the birth of her
mm,
grandchildren. So supporting that process, supporting her daughter, being present
mm,
for her grandchildren's birth was really important to her. And that absolutely affects how she doula in amazing ways. It's so fun to get to hear her stories as she's continued on
mm,
through her journey. And for me, starting in postpartum came out of a love of
mhm.
babysitting. I didn't have the movie theater ice cream parlor job in
Oh,
high school. I babysat. I babysat for all of my neighbors, all of the family. If anybody wanted me to, I was there. I would do. So I've always loved the kids and babies especially. Like babies they're fun and they're cute and they're sweet and I love it. So
mhm,
birth to me came out of postpartum coming, all these parents are coming home right out of the hospital. And I was baffled for a long time as to how people are coming home from the hospital with so many questions. Weren't you just in a place of expert? And then the more that I dove into birth work and really understanding what is and very much is not
mhm.
part of people's hospital experience or how that differs from a midwifery experience or a home birth experience, what working with an OB versus a midwife looks like, access to care, pricing options, all of these different factors that go into, did they take childbirth
Mm,
education? Do they have six siblings that have all had kids or are they the first one in their family who's having a baby? All these different kind of knowledge pools within the clients really affected birth. So I walked back into birth from that standpoint. And I really just found that the kind of the personal politics of it for me, seeing one methodology that I really aligned with and that really felt like, why isn't everybody doing that? Became hard to navigate kind of the other side of
mhm,
it when these are not my choices to make, but I see how these are going to set you up for a very different experience. So moving back into
mm,
postpartum was both a way to get off of being on call because being on call for birth
yeah.
was stressful for me, which is something I didn't know when I started, but was important for me to realize and find out that if I'm waking up every day in a panic thinking I've missed a phone call,
Yeah.
am I going to be the the best doula that I can be when it is time for that phone call and I need to drop and join for labor? So postpartum for me also gave me a chance to really focus in on what I love is the baby caretaking, but seeing how taking care of the baby takes care of the family. If I can do things by example
Mhm,
that give parents a little bit more confidence, if I can make suggestions that they go, oh, I did that thing that you recommended last night, slept for four
mhm,
hours those are the moments that I really love seeing is, I think of it very much as working myself out of a job. It's been my
mhm,
mentality for a long time is that, I'm there to put the skills in place to help and do individualized feedback on what are you experiencing? How is your best friend's baby slept through the night from 2 weeks
yeah.
on? Great for them. They're one of the lucky
Mhm,
ones. That is not an experience I would expect for you to have. Here's how we can get you to that
mhm,
point though. It's not that your baby is never going to sleep through the night. It's not that this
mhm,
is this horrible cycle you're in right now when you feel like you're drowning. We have things we can change about that. But a lot of people, it's
mhm,
like, where do you start? There's thousands of books. Do you have time to read thousands of books? You do not. Google, best friend, worst enemy. Yeah, you're going to find
yeah.
all kinds of information. How do you figure out what is important for you and what works for your family? And I think that's really where I
Mm,
began what my role and how I like to support postpartum being from that
mhm,
perspective. I have all of this knowledge. I've taken all of these kinds of classes,
mm,
but how can I distill that down for you? Because you do not need to know everything
mhm,
out of the 60 classes that I've taken. You just
mm.
need to know
That's
what is
great.
relevant to
And,
your life. I can be that kind of for
there's
you.
no education for or no leading in it. So I think about on the side of birth, right? I think it's becoming a little bit more common of, okay, I'm starting to plan for our family and wanting to like have a child and starting to like do some early education. But for the most part, it's in the 9 months before you have a baby. And a lot of people hyper focus on my birth plan, what I want in my birth, and then you have a baby, and then there is no, you're learning as you go, and there's
Mhm.
no like education beforehand a lot of times. And so you can go take a baby class. The best thing you're going to learn, right, is like often how to change a baby's diaper, holding a baby, like that type of stuff. But every baby is so different. Sometimes the things we learn don't always carry through into events that are occurring for us. And so being able to like be that part in that family, help them navigate and be encouraging as well. I think that is huge, is because sometimes a lot of people weren't even around babies or kids and kind of like, I don't even know what to do. And so just being like, you're doing amazing. Like just loving that baby, you're doing amazing and
Absolutely.
being their cheerleader and their coach in it. We can sometimes feel like the work we've done didn't have impact if we don't see it because we're also right like that instant gratification. And I think sometimes it's the hardest part of being a doula is we do a lot of really good work, but it's really unspoken of, which is great. Like I always knew I did a good job as a birth doula when the dad would be like, "Thank you so much. Like I couldn't do it without you." Like reward that I did what I was supposed to do because I brought them together and dad felt supported too. About that too of on the postpartum side is, we do work ourselves out of a job, but that is like the reward in it because we've given them the skills. We've taken our information and have, imprinted on them to be the best for that like little baby and that their family unit. And so there's a lot of unspoken affirmations. I don't know if that's a word I want to use, but there's a lot of, like you have to be very, very selfless and know you're not always going to get the like positive rewards at the end of it when you walk away from a client. And sometimes that can be hard because for me, I came from fundraising industry into the birth and postpartum field and I could see a number and know like we did good. And whereas this, and in this, it was kind of like, okay, I mean, mom got to sleep, but was that the best? Like, was that, like struggling with that sometimes of being on individual personalities, kind of like this, and you have to set everything of your being to the side because you are there to only be what they need you to be and stuff of that. So yeah.
I think that's a really
Mhm.
important part of it too, in that for me that came in the form of a check-in. There's a certain point when you've worked
Mhm.
with a family for a long time that you know what to expect. There's not always
Yes.
something new that they need to sit and process with you, maybe at the beginning or during a shift, but just finding out. And you start again by asking questions. When I get there, especially for an overnight shift, how did the day go? How has everything been since I was
Mhm.
here
Mhm.
16 hours ago? Was it a horrible day where you just need to go to bed and you have no bandwidth to talk
Mm.
anymore? Or was today great? You got out, you had lunch with your friend, they, oohed and awed over your cute little baby. You
Yes.
came home, you felt great, and you want to talk about it. You're excited. I don't go in expecting one or the other. I always hope for the latter, but some days are the former. And some people just need to be heard in that. Like today really sucked. Maybe with the all day, I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I felt like I tried everything that you had
Yeah.
taught me that I could think of. I called my mom. She told me that she never had this problem and she didn't know why I was whining about it. Everybody has different versions of that. So, if I go in thinking, yay, this is a great night, I'm going to have a great night with the baby, things are going to be awesome. And then you hear
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
I can't let myself get defeated over that. There goes all my energy. I guess we're just
Mhm.
gonna have a crappy night too then. How can I hear, process, and then still go about my job without taking that on and thinking, oh, we're all just gonna have a terrible time now.
Yeah.
But it's not about coming in and being necessarily cheer somebody up about that. You're allowed to have a crappy day. You're
Mhm.
allowed to tell me about it. And whether that's the end of the conversation, you just needed to get it off of your chest and now you can go to bed, or now you're going to go take a nap or go do something with your other kiddos. Making space for those things to happen, I think, is really important to rolling with the
Mm.
process. And
Mhm.
it's something that I definitely learned as I went. When I first started, I was very much in the you tell me what you're expecting me to do next. And now
Yeah.
I really come in
I,
without a solid plan, but with a couple different ideas in my
always
head
try to
based on the
explain
questions
to
that I'm
new
going to.
doulas, like, especially a day support, really, though you're there and you're assisting, like, most, if not 50% of your time should be in conversing or doing something that is helping mom, baby, or family, right? Like, do the dishes, like, that type of stuff. But there's a lot of processing. Like, sometimes it is just talking about, like, their frustrations and that safe space to also process. I always so surprised at how much moms need to kind of work through their like mental load because they're home having a lot of input from the outside. And so a lot of times giving them even that's where it feels like we're kind of taking in their weight of like their struggles And so it's hard stuff like marriage. They didn't expect the baby to be so needy. The hard transition from one to two, and how, it's not that you dislike your other child, that you're overwhelmed. Working through a lot of that and carrying that weight. And I think sometimes that can be hard, but because I know I'm a fixer. Like
Yeah.
I love to when I fix a problem, but being able to be like, okay, sometimes there is no fixing the situation, and helping them just have that space to be able to listen and know that but then as the doula, when you walk out, is also having your own self-care, because I think that is do carry a lot of weight overnight. I mean, a lot of clients, like when I would do overnights and if they were still nursing baby and I would, have them out of the room and like want to sit and talk and nurse, and being able to just give them that like space. And but I had to have a place where like it was like, okay, this is a lot of it, and sometimes it was like really really heavy stuff. And so I think self-care is really important. I know like shared your partner that you've been like you can work together and now you're just really good referrals and friends, but what other potential life care areas do you have for yourself that and keep doing the like longevity and sustainability of the work?
Yeah. I think exactly what you said, like the relationship you're building with the client can feel very intimate. Like you're talking about big life things. When people can be, I used to call it 3 a.m. honesty, those middle
Yeah.
of the night nursing sessions where mom is like, this is on my brain, it's coming out of my mouth. This is happening now. And sometimes it's, I didn't know that about your partner, or I didn't realize you had that much kind of family situation going on.
Mm,
And it's not reciprocal, I think is the hard part for a lot of people. And it's a trap to, and that trap may not be the right word there, but it's something to definitely be
yes.
wary of. This isn't and should not be, in
Mhm.
my opinion, at least, a reciprocal relationship. Your client is not there to listen to what's going
Yeah.
on with you and your partner, or the fact that one of your kids is having a hard time. You learn how to listen without taking on. And
Yeah.
a lot of that can come from validating or just making sure the client's feeling heard, even if there isn't anything tangible that you can or are able to do about it. Not letting that processing go. But no matter how hard you try not to take things on, that's hard. It's hard not to want to, especially if you are a fixer or a problem solver personality. It's hard not to,
Yeah.
it turns around. And I've had several clients where things just turn around in my brain. There are people that I still think about. And I really hope that worked out for
Mm,
them because it's been years. I'm not actively part of their lives or part of their process anymore, but memories stick in your head. So having a place, whether that's a person and, all of this kind of
yeah.
balancing with client privacy as well. Sometimes you can get that in like a
Mhm.
social media group, or you're able to maybe do something anonymous or leave out enough details, but put in enough to get your point across. Karen and I process a
Mhm.
lot. If she's had a difficult birth or something that, caught her off guard, I can tell her about a struggle that I'm having and get some feedback on like, these are my thoughts on it. Whether or not that's helpful to me or whether it's just nice for me to be heard for a change, even if what I'm sharing is not personal to me, is part of my experience. It's part of what's going on in my
Yeah.
life and my world. I think a lot of people let self care be thought of as I'm going to have a spa
Mhm.
day or I'm going to go have fancy lunch today or something. If that helps you, if that helps you to just do something nice for yourself
Mhm.
that feels good for you, absolutely. But it is not the be all and end all of self care to just go get your nails done or go
Mhm.
have a massage or something. That could be part of it if that works for you. But I think having a place to get those feelings and those thoughts and just the rattling around that all of the things we interact with our clients on out of ourselves. Moving into mental health, I'm obviously a big advocate for therapy. But I know that's a tricky thing to navigate for some people. But that's also something to factor way back into your business expenses and what it means to be a business owner. Are you making time to deal with your own stuff, things that come up for you? Maybe you have a client that had a really traumatic birth and they feel the need to tell you every detail of it
Mhm.
because that is how they're processing. There's a certain point that you can listen without really having anything
Yeah.
necessarily that you can do about that other than listen. Also knowing when you might need to refer them on. Hey,
Mm,
we have talked every night this week about your birth and you keep telling me the same story. I really think you need somebody maybe a little bit qualified in a different way to process this with. Maybe you do need to talk to a therapist, or you really
yeah.
seem stressed out by everything that's going on with your partner. You feel like you told me you guys are on the same page with things.
Yeah.
Maybe the two of you would benefit from talking to somebody, or Maybe you need a date
Yeah.
night babysitter so you guys can go out and be outside of this, kind of 24/7 environment focused around baby. So where you can maybe pull back a little bit with your clients and
Mhm.
offer them other resources than just taking everything on for yourself. And also realizing that
Yeah.
anything that you have taken on.
Is that of, like, getting a massage and, like, all of the stuff, which, I mean, after a hard birth, oh, 100%, that is great, but I think that there is a huge element of being able to fully process what you went
Yeah.
through, right, when dairy trauma, so even, like, on the birth, even in postpartum, if clients had implications or things of that, I think about clients that
Mhm.
have, mental health stuff that comes out, postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, things of that. And if we've walked through, there are doulas who have lost client due to, the very unfortunate postpartum, like disorders and everything. And so is being able to like, do you need to vent? Do you just need to be able to get it out? Because just saying it like it's like a fresh of breath air to just get it out? Or do you need to process and come up with referrals for clients? Do you need to process are we working towards a solution type of situation? We talk about it. Because sleep does wonders for our brain power. And having, I think, in the self care process is making sure you're designating good sleep for yourself. Our bodies can only do so much. And when we tend to start to get lack of sleep, lack of nutrition, lack of, energy and that type of stuff, our brain starts to like really spiral. And so making sure like for the doula that, and then, I think in the self care plan, is some sort of exercise, whether it's walk, doing something impact on the body. And so doing that and then, okay, let's circle back. Where are we at? Okay, was that all that was needed? Or are we kind of at that place again where
Absolutely.
it's like more is needed here and being able to help them to walk through and process that and make sure that they're getting as the doula the support too, because I think everyone has different person. I don't tend to take on it like others' feelings like that, like I have a very like, okay, like everything has categories, we can work through it. But there are a few girls like on my team who just like feel, they're such empaths. And so they feel so much of what their client is going through that it becomes there is an attached to them and having to really wash clean and recognize like we can support our clients, offered to clients like, hey, you know what, during the postpartum or session, why don't you schedule an online counseling session and I can take the baby for you. You know what I mean? Like helping them find options because sometimes it might be, well, how do I do this with a new baby? Like I will work with you to figure out what this looks because we do want the best for our clients in their healing process, in their mental health and everything. And so, yeah,
I've gone with clients to therapy sessions where mom drove, I was along for the ride, and then
yeah,
mom went into the appointment and I stayed in the lobby or the waiting area with baby. They were not far apart. If there was anything mom felt like she needed to nurse or needed to have that
mhm,
closeness still,
yeah,
it wasn't full on like babysitting or maybe more newborn care specialist type work where I'm at home and mom is
mhm,
off doing that. But I think it's very much the part of the process. And then even
yeah,
with little things like, how do I get all of my errands accomplished when I have to keep paying attention to baby? Cool. Let's go together. Let's figure out what that looks like and let's see how much you really need that kind of help. I think what you were saying, time is a big part of it too. Are you hearing the same things day after day and they don't seem to be getting any better? That's something to
mhm,
pay attention to on the client side. But I think on the doula side as well, how many
yeah,
clients are you stacking either simultaneously or back to back? When are you taking breaks? I think that's one of the hardest
yeah,
things, for
yeah,
any business owner is this is all on me. There is no paid vacation days. There are
mhm,
no mandatory holidays or things where the business shuts down. Even if you step away from your
mhm,
computer for the whole day or something, is it still running in your mind? Are you still thinking about what you're going to do
yeah,
tomorrow when you agreed to yourself that you will get back on the computer and make those edits or do those changes? And I think that's a big part of self care too is when do you take breaks? It can be really hard, especially when you're starting out and you're trying to base everything on the client's timeline. Well, I have 3 births in this month or after this birth, and I've got 8 weeks,
yep,
and then the next person should be giving birth maybe 2 weeks out. But if they go early, then I'm
mhm,
back to back, or crap, they went so early that now I'm overlapping and I'm having to do double
yep,
duty, or I'm calling in backups, or both of my clients aren't happy because they're not getting exactly what
yeah,
they want.
mhm. Okay, in 9 months, you don't know if you're gonna be burned out, you know if there is gonna be, like, a client issue or whatever that might be, you gotta be like, "Hey,
Mhm.
okay, I've had a consistent workload. In 9 months, I need to plan a vacation. I'm off. I need to plan what that looks like. And so it's very, very different than the outside world because you really can't be like, okay, well, in the midst of having clients, I'm going to go take a trip. These clients have an expectation. We need to fulfill that. And so
Yeah,
being able to really ensure that there is that like planning in that process of what that looks like and not overdoing it 100% I think is huge. I love that and I just absolutely positively have loved our time together.
thank you so
Yeah.
much. It's been great to kind of get to share. I offer
Yeah.
doula mentoring.
Thank you. We will like be sure to be including the information about your business. And if anyone would like to send you an email, if that's okay, if you want us to include that on there and any further questions, because I think, sometimes we hear stuff and we're like, oh, wow, that was, but I have just
Absolutely.
been so appreciative of your time and your sharing. And you are just a very genuine, beautiful soul. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolutely.